Kia ora, nau mai, haramai, welcome. Welcome to Roo Table Kōrero this evening. Before we start things off, I've got the very gorgeous, my partner here, Nikora Narapo, who's going to open us up with karakia this evening. Thank you, darling.
Kia ora tātou katoa, nei rā te mihi kia koutou I tēnei pō, I whakakau mai nei ki tēnei kaupapa, ngā rauranga sirama, ngā māngai, tēnā koutou katoa, ki ngoi tātou. Tēnei te hokai nei takutapu ai, ko te hokai nuku, ko te hokai rangi, ko te hokai ato tūpunga tāne nui a rangi. Pikitia ai ngā rangi tūhaha ki te tihi o mānono, I roko ngā tura koi o matua kore anaku. I riro iho ai ngā kite o te wānanga, ko te ki te tuauri, ko te ki te tuatea, ko te ki te aronui, ka tiritiri a, ka paupau a, kia papatua nuku. Ka pute te ira tangata ki te whai ao ki te ao maranga. Kia tūturu a ki te whakamaua kia tīna.
Tina.
Haumi e hui e.
Tāi ki.
Kia ora
Thank you,
tātou.
darling. E mihi ana ki a tātou kua whakakotahi mai ki te tautoko I te kaupapa o te pōnei, tēnā rau atu tātou. So nau mai, haramai, welcome to Roo Table Kōrero. It's lovely to be here again. We've got three gorgeous speakers coming up this evening. And again, we're talking around the kaupapa, the journey of me. So we've got a great lineup, so let's get things underway. We'd love to welcome the very gorgeous Linda McGregor. Nau mai haramai, welcome Linda.
Oh, kia ora whānui. E tēnei ko kia ora.
Linda, tell us where you're from. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so Tiatiawa, Ngāti Raukaua, Ngāti Kahanganunu, whānau Apanui. I'm a little bit nervous right now. So, ngā iwi.
Oh, awesome.
Ataho nui e paparangi. Ngā iwi. Ko Linda McGregor taku ingoa. So I'm based in Wellington,
Awesome.
but I have a whakapapa that is depth, has great depth across our country.
Wonderful, wonderful. And tell us, you've got quite a presence on social media. Can you talk to us a bit about your presence on social media?
Well, would you like me to talk about that, why I'm doing what I'm doing, or would you
Actually,
like me to?
that'd be great because you're starting off. What are we doing tonight, Linda? Tell us.
Okay, so this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to share with everyone tonight how to make a loaf of rewena bread.
Okay.
So that's how my social media presence started. So It would have been about probably about 2.5 years ago. About 2.5 to 3 years ago, I was sitting in my kitchen or standing in my kitchen, and I thought, actually, all my aunties, apart from one who made our rewena bread, is no longer with us. My mother was not a bread maker. So she was, my mother, Tuai Mātou Turo, she was a matakate. So we had, we have a very talented family, but there were no bread makers. I didn't know how to make rewena. So I decided to try and teach myself how to do this. And I did quite a lot of research, but couldn't find anything that was online. So I thought this is a great way to do something with my son, because he likes to get on the online. And then I started teaching myself how to make a rewena bug, and I just put it on the internet so people could see my failings at first and then my triumphs. So that's what I did. And I just, because when I was younger, and so tonight we're just going to make a quick loaf of rewena bread. This is only going to take us, well, not even 5 minutes. So it took about it, I think probably about 1.5 years to work on a bug that was consistent and that was easy to use. And so my whole kind of philosophy around teaching people how to make rewena bread, if I teach you how to make this, then your family will never go hungry.
Awesome. And so sorry.
No, continue.
I was going to say, so the inspiration came from your auntie, who was the last to have the recipe? Was it your son? What was it that really inspired you to kind of do this?
It was to keep, for me, food and and the ability to cook and the ability to share is how I show my love.
Yeah.
And when I remember my aunties at Ngāti Punaki, or when I remember my aunties, and I remember the rewena bread, and I remember the smell, and I can remember sitting on, those big tables when I was really little with the butter and the jam and a cup of tea and things like that. And these are all these memories that came to me, but there was no one in my kind of sphere of influence that actually was there to actually help me go through that journey. And I thought, I really want to teach myself how to do that, because I remember as a little girl, I used to stand up there and I used to look at the aunties, and then I could smell the bread, and then I could see the big containers, when we've got our big casseroles,
Yes.
and then the blue checkered tea towels.
Yes.
in the back of the car, and we'd have to kind of bring them all up. So it was the inspiration of, if I can learn how to do this, then I can teach people how to do this, and if I can teach a generation how to do this, then this will not die. This is rewena is a living whakapapa, because
So
most families will have a recipe that has been passed down. A lot of families have lost the bug, or I get a lot of women around my age in their early 50s who were too busy trying to be cool, instead of standing in the kitchen and learning from their nannies and from their aunties or from their mother. And now, as they have passed on, there's that real mai that kind of sits there, and they want to learn. So that is the inspiration, really, through wanting to create this. And it's a very easy recipe to use. And if I can teach you how to make a bug, then I can teach you to how to look after your family.
Yeah. I know that our grandmother passed away just over 2.5 years ago. One of the things she said to me, because I actually like to bake, so I'm known for like cream puffs and Russian fudge, and those are kind of my areas when my whānau or even my friends want something, that's what they'll ask me for. The chocolate eclairs have actually come from my mum and then from her mum.
Yes.
And mum used to always make chocolate fudge. But I remember my nana saying to me, days before she passed, she said, you need to learn to make bread. And I was just like, bread? Like, no, I don't need to make bread, But I think that there was a message in that, and at some point, and probably need to actually follow your videos, is learning to make flour.
Well, and I mean, and this also came from a place of need. So
Yeah.
7.5 years ago, I became, my marriage ended, and then we came from a place where we did actually have abundance to actually not having a lot. So I have I had two teenage children that I had to bring up. So this came part of, there were times where money was very scarce. So I started to plant my own vegetables. I started to buy the fruit and the vegetables seasonally from the market. So I used to go down there, and when it was just before the market was about to end, and I would go and say to the people at the market, hey, look, can I buy that, that spoiled fruit? And I'd make jams, chutneys and sauces, and I would make bread. And it became a way in which I could sustain my family. And also it was a way in which we knew what was actually going in our kai. My daughter suffers from chronic eczema. So it's really important that we have, clean as food as we possibly can. And I know exactly what's going in here. So at the moment, what we have in here, we have just two cups of flour. And, we have lots of those sourdough recipes, European sourdough recipes, which call for, spelt flour, or they have this flour and that flour. Mine was actually, you're going to have flour. Any flour. I prefer not self-raising flour, but just have flour. This is 2 cups, just 2 cups of flour. That's all it is. And you can put in there, I was just having a look to see, you don't have to put this in there. This is sugar. you just have to put half a dessert spoon in of sugar, and that's it. If you want to put it in there, great, and if you don't, then that's fine as well. So there's only 4 ingredients that go into bread. One thing I don't put into bread is I don't put in salt. So salt is the arch enemy of yeast.
Okay, that's
so
good to know.
So salt will try and kill the yeast, and the sugar will feed the yeast, and this is natural yeast spores that we've actually got from the flour and also from the air. That's what makes your bug rise. And from in there, we just put 1 cup of water. Now I do the same method every time I make bread. And so my background, when I was 19, I trained as a chef, and I absolutely still love hospitality, and food is still a big part of my passion. I just don't do it for a living.
I was listening to a friend of mine today. She's one of 7, and she was saying that they were incredibly poor as a family growing up. Her father's Dutch and her mother's Māori. And she said, but the one thing they had, and I heard this in your kōrero, was the one thing they had that was consistent was their mother would always make bread. And that was the one thing that sustained them and kept them good in terms of their health and well-being as they were kids growing up. And the smell of bread, she said, just makes her feel warm and cozy,
Yeah, it's when people walk into my home and my children come home, and there's the warmth from the oven, from the bread that is sitting there, and it makes you feel loved. And I've done a few courses with people that look after children's homes for children that have been temporarily separated from their families, and I said, they could be there for one day, they could be there for a week, they could be there for a year, but everyone has an experience of a good experience from food. Yes. And it doesn't have to be the expensive experience, from food. And so even poor is, I think, is a concept for me. I don't need to have a lot of money to be rich. In my home, there will always be food. Always. I can always make a bread, or I can, and you ask any of my whānau, they come here, they always come to Auntie Linda's place, and there will always be food on the table there. And that's what I equate wealth to being.
Yes.
Because you can't chew on a $10 note. And what we find is a lot of people that are in desperate need, and they don't know how to cook. And what they're doing is if they've got $4, and I know if you've got $4 and you've got to feed your family of 5, you're going to get probably 3 cans of spaghetti, and you'll get a loaf of that tiger bread or something from the shop, or you'll go down and get hot chips, because it is all about filling their tummies. Yeah. Where if you gave me $10, then I would have got, we'd go and get the vegetables, and we put the vegetables in the garden, and then we learn how to make, flour is a couple of dollars to buy. Water is out of the tap. Your bug is something that you will make and you'll keep. I mean, so this bug in here, this bug I made about 1.5 years ago. Wow. So I've been perfecting my bug. So what it is just grated raw potato, water, flour, and sugar sometimes if it needs a bit of a oomph. Okay. And that's it. And I leave it, I always put it with a tea towel over the top, because it still needs to get the air circulating, and I always leave it sitting on my bench. Now this is another bug that I've got, and that one there, you'll see that there's a bit of a skin that's there. That's the actual alcohol that comes from the fermentation process, and it's called the hooch. So this is what makes your sourdough sour.
Okay. Now I have a question. Sorry, just quickly. When you're making parawa, or actually when you're cooking food, I have a bit of a whakaaro, a bit of a thinking around when you make food with aroha, when you make it with love, you can then taste it. And so food makes you feel a certain way, like like food is the common or kai is the common denominator for, doesn't matter what culture or what background you're from. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. So there's one thing that I will never do. If I am angry or sad, I won't cook, because my tears don't need to go into my food. And I, you know, I'll, if I don't feel great, if I'm not feeling very well, you know, my kids, my two children are very good cooks, so they'll cook dinner. So I believe that what you impart, and you impart part of your I don't know, your wider, it goes into this, and that's very, very important to me. So what I am doing, everything I do is very intentional. So there is intention that sits in my rewena bug. There is intention that sits in this flower, and this intention is to impart my love, to ensure the well-being of the person who is going to be receiving the paraora that I'm making, you know, for them, and that is very important to me. So we've got 2 cups of flour in there. We've got 1 cup of tempered water, and we have 1 cup of bug, and half a dessert spoon of sugar, and that's it. Okay. And so we're just going to mix this up, and then I'll show you how to knead. And for me, when you knead, you have light fingers. So light fingers, and depending on where you are, how high you are from the sea level, what the temperature is outside, and the humidity, you may use more flour, you may use less flour. So it is kind of, this is 2 cups of flour, but it'll probably be 2.5, could even be 3 cups, because this is quite a wet mixture. So this is what we call it's a sourdough, which is a high hydration loaf. So it means it's a very high liquid loaf. Now, I also have to say that there's lots of nannies out there, and there's lots of aunties, and there's lots of mums that do things very differently from me, and that's okay, because every recipe has its whakapapa. And I was talking to my auntie in the last couple of days, and she puts milk in her rewena. Okay. And I do that. So we have this here, and then we just put a little bit of flour over it, and this is kind of just how I bring it together. So I don't. So it's, and when the people ask me, oh, there's my little thing just came out. When people ask me about what's the consistency of your loaf, what I say to them is it should feel like a woman's breast, soft like a woman's breast. And then people go, oh, you shouldn't say that. But actually there is intention in the reason why I say that. 3 years ago, yes, last week actually, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So, you know, for me, it's really important that we look after ourselves. It's really important that we, you know, and that we examine our bodies, we look after ourselves. And I was very, very lucky. You know, I was incredibly lucky. And that, so when people say, so, you know, it should be as soft as your, you know, as a woman's breast. And that's it.
That's lovely.
That is now done.
So can I just thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you're going to put that in the oven?
No, this will, unfortunately, what I would have done is I would have made a loaf this morning, and I would have baked it, but I only just arrived home. This will, when you look at this loaf, so where it sits in there, it will rise up to here. Okay. And then you put it in the oven. You bake it for just over, normally about 210, because bread likes hot ovens. And you do that for about 35 minutes, but do 20 minutes, then 10 minutes, and then do another 5 minutes. So keep on checking it. And then your bread should be fine. Pull it out, put it on a wire rack, and I normally put a damp tea towel around it. So I like to have a soft crust. My dad doesn't. He likes to have a hard crust. So when he wants his bread, I'll take it out of this pot. I'll put it in the oven for another 5 minutes, because he wants to have that crust, the one that almost going to break your teeth. Yeah.
I just want to wrap us up. First of all, thank you for sharing with us. I just want to ask a quick question.
Yep.
Having had breast cancer, we were talking today, actually. I was talking with Ngā Tiriti from Waikato Tainui, and her and I were talking around how many people we knew had breast cancer. My mother's had it, and it's many of us know women who have had experiences or challenges with regards to breast cancer. But I just want to, what do you do as part of this teaching of others? Is that part of what you do for your well-being, Linda?
Oh, absolutely. So I have so as I said, everything I do now is with intent.
Yes.
So I ensure that I cook well, I eat well. I've always been active anyway, so it is about exercise. It is about taking yourself out of situations where you have no control. It is, for me, it is about the work, the mahi that I do, I love. My life is too short. So it's building a whole world of wellness that is actually around you. So this has been a 3-year journey. I've had 4 operations, so we're just at the, and I've got 2 more years to go before we, sign off and things like that. You can choose to live with whatever cancer you have and exist, or you can choose to live. Now, I'm an active person. I love my life. I love my children, and I ensure that I do things that bring me joy. This brings me joy. Teaching brings me joy, and my enthusiasm for life brings me joy. In regards to cancer, there's so many things that have happened in medical research now that means that we don't have to go through some of the journeys that some other people have actually gone through. But I always say to people, make sure you look after yourself. Make sure that when you get to 45 that you are taking those necessary checks. Because if I hadn't have done what I did, and if I had waited another 6 months, it could be a very different story. But you can either exist or choose to live.
And you know what? That's a great way to finish off this kōrero, also given that it's Mental Health Awareness Week this week. And so, that whole whakaaro, that kōrero that you've just shared is really relevant. Thank you so much for sharing. We're going to bring you back a bit later on in our kōrero, but thank you so much, Linda. That was incredibly inspirational. Thank you. We'll talk again. We've got Mauds and then Hannah, and then we'll bring you all back together. So stay online. Thank you, Linda. Thank you. And now we're going to introduce the very gorgeous, lovely Maureen Tani Tinero, affectionately known as Mauds. Kia ora, nau mahara mai, Mauds.
Kia ora, darling. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you for inviting me into your whare. You and your darling.
Thank you for participating in this evening and we look forward to hearing your pūrākau as we, go through our kōrero. Now, please tell us where you're from, Mauds. Tell us a little bit about yourself. It'd be lovely.
Oh, kia ora. Kia ora whānui. He uri o Tainui ahau, ko Ngāti Maniapoto, toku iwi, ko Ngāti Uekaha, toku hapu. Ko Maureen Tani ahau. Our papa he was born in Kinohaku, in the Waikato area, but e tupu ake, kia ora, e tupu ake mātou kei Otautahi. So we all grew up here in Otautahi, down in the ocean.
Wow, and if you've ever been to Kinohaku, it's like blink and you're through it.
I know. It's beautiful though, isn't it?
It is so gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. It's so green and hilly. It's beautiful. So tell us, you've got children, a beautiful husband.
We've got our baby. Well, I say baby, but of course she's, in her late 20s, Forrest, who's here at the moment.
Yes.
She's just come back from Melbourne. So it's been an interesting time for our whānau, welcoming her home and, providing tautoko for her through her experience in the quarantine realm. And having her home again is just like having a little piece of our hearts, you know, click back into place. Having her kei Aotearoa. And tomorrow, her Papa Blair will drive her up to Wellington to start the next phase of her life.
Wow. Well, no mahara mai, welcome home, Forrest. It's lovely to have you here back in Aotearoa. I saw the photos that you guys were putting up when she was in isolation, and that must have been so hard to not touch her for 14 days.
Oh my gosh, it's so full on having, you know, because we were separated by the big 2-meter fences, and, you know, we're all masked up and observing all of the protocols, and it's hard. Yeah.
So I bet it was.
So, and then when we finally got her out on Friday, it was awesome. You know, we were so excited. It was the highlight of our week, and we turned up with, you know, helium balloons, and no one else did. Just us.
Oh. And tell me, Mauds, your mahi, can you tell us a bit about your mahi and your work with your brother and your sister?
Okay, shall we take hapa first? So
yes, we'll do hapa first.
So we have a beautiful design store, a shop here in Christchurch called Hapa. We actually have 2 outlets, one in the central city in the BNZ Centre, and one out in Woolston at the Tannery, which is a really beautiful Victoriana style arcade. The store in the city is in a brand new space, so they're 2 very different vibes, but and catering to quite different markets. But essentially, we have the same focus for both stores, which is supporting and promoting local design, Māori design, Aotearoa design. So that's the focus of what we do, and we try and keep our footprint as small as possible. And we have just over 200 local creators that we have on our books that we represent, which is really awesome. All the way from, we've got one of our suppliers who's about 12 years old, who makes these beautiful little taonga for us in glass bottles, right through to my mate, my mete Keith, who's 94 years old, who makes hands. Yeah, he makes pens out of red zone timber, and he jumps on his electric bicycle and delivers those into me. So a range of local people that we try our hardest to support in our mahi and promotion.
And can I just ask, with regards to the stores, have you had, due to this year, which has been challenging for a lot of us, have you had to shift your business from kanohi, face-to-face, to online? Has that been a bit of a change for you?
Yeah, it's we've been online since 2012, so that space is very familiar to us. But of course, when the level 4 lockdown hit, it became crucial to our business, because up until lockdown, kanohi ki te kanohi style was probably 80% of our business and just 20% online. But that, during lockdown, it was 100% of our business. We were closed. We didn't know when we were going to open. So all of our efforts went into really trying to perfect our offer online as much as possible, because the challenge is that the kind of products that we have, many of which are handmade, you want to touch and feel and interact with, try it on, and textures and patterns, and so trying to translate that into only online sales was challenging. But we had everything in place that we needed. We just needed to put a little bit more effort in there, and between having a good offer online and having massive tautoko from all around the motu from our customers made all the difference in the world. So between being online and getting the wages subsidy immediately.
Yeah.
Saved our business, you know.
Yeah.
And
then you do some work also with your brother and your sister. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, that's the love project, that one. So we are a whānau business, Tiki Dub Productions. So there's the three of us. There's me, I'm the big sister, and then there's my taina, Nina Kay. She's the managing director, and she manages our brother Tiki, the musician. And our company is it's music production, events. So there's a few strings to that bow, but of course our brother is our prime. He's the tohu of our company, and me and Nina Kay do our best to keep up.
and your mother's just asking, is Kōrero doing the dishes?
He is. Can you hear him, Mum? Can you hear him? Yeah. I think all the plates look safe so far. I think we're good. They're just getting a cursory lick with the tea towel.
Now, you've been through an incredible personal journey over the last little bit. The wonderful thing about yourself and Nina and Tiki is that I don't think I've ever come across siblings that are just so incredibly intertwined in terms of the love that you have for one another, the trust that you have for one another, and that when you make decisions, although I know Tiki's a bit of a rascal from time to time. I hope he's listening. No. is that you really do it as one. And I know you've been so tell us about your journey that you've been through over the last few months, because I know it's been quite an emotive time for you and for your whānau. So tell
Well, you know what? If you ask anybody who lives in Ōtautahi, they'll tell you it's been 10 years of hard graft.
Yeah.
So we know challenges. We know challenges at what feels like a DNA level, and the last couple of years have been tough. But I feel like and certainly tough at the moment. But I feel like in some way the earthquake experience that we had end of 2010, beginning 2011, kind of set those wheels in motion for stepping up to challenges and meeting them with as much grace and energy and passion that you can summon. Like harking back to what Whaia Linda was saying before about attitude and grit and determination. So we got through the trauma of living through a physical disaster, and then the aftermath of living through a disaster, which is also known as the rebuild, which is its own kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Trying to keep our businesses afloat through some massive challenges around earthquakes and demolition and resourcing and lack of resourcing. And then fast forward to early 2019, when I had a diagnosis of head and neck cancer, which is an HPV cancer. It's one of the most common skin cancers that are out there. The bonus of which, if you want to call it that, is that it's very well researched. So one of the first things they tell you when you get your diagnosis and you're still sitting there in a little bit of a stunned mullet state is that it's survivable. It's very survivable. You have an 85% chance of coming through it with your life in your hands. So it's a pretty out the gate, pretty awesome message to get straight up, because I think when you hear that word cancer or tumour, you go into a little bit of a tailspin, because for most of us, we've all had some experience in that realm, whether it's ourselves or our whānau or our friends, and we've all had experiences that have ended in heartache, trauma.
Yes.
And even for those that survive their treatment, you know, the life going forward is full of challenges. So all those things go through your head when you get your diagnosis. And of course, when you get that, they swing into action mode. So, you know, you're sitting in a room with 12 people, everyone from your oncology team to nutritionist and dietitian, and they're all, you know, they've got your X-rays and things up on a screen, and they're talking to you, but they're not really talking to you. They're actually talking to each other about your treatment plan, and you're sitting there in this little pool of what is happening. Oh my gosh, trying to process this news, and then from there things happen pretty quickly. Certainly, I was really lucky because my diagnosis came right at the pretty much at the genesis of it. So the symptoms, I had textbook symptoms, super sore throat that wouldn't go away. If you have a super sore throat that won't go away, go get yourself a checkup.
Yes.
You know, as a wahine, as a mama, as a business person, you're just so used to being tired anyway, you know.
Yeah. And you push things aside, right?
You do.
You know, that's normal. You know, me having a sore throat and feeling a bit run down and tired, pretty normal. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
You just get used to existing in that space, even if maybe there's a little voice inside you that says, I actually think this is something. You're like, shh, I'm busy over here. I got
things going on.
I got 10 stuff to do. So eventually my beautiful Tane got very annoyed with me, and he's like, you get in there or else, and pushed me.
Yeah, because I know you had a private Facebook page, and you know, for friends and whānau, about your journey, and one of the most delightful parts of that was perhaps not all the animal videos, which were very funny, but actually was just your family. You know, your mum. You know, your husband was phenomenal. He was just phenomenal. And, you know, those last few days, and you had your big balloons and you brought them in. And it was amazing that although you were going through such a challenging time, you were so incredibly positive. You know, that was what we saw, you know. And by the way, you were the most fashionable person, I'm sure, on the ward. But it was, excuse me, it was lovely to see the love of those closest to you, you know.
It got me through.
Yeah.
You know, between my beautiful whānau, my friends, and there's a Facebook support group that I was connected to of other head and neck cancer survivors. The amazing team. You know, I went through the public health system, and I don't know that I would have got better care if I'd gone private. You know, the beautiful, humble, hardworking people that you meet along the way, who for them this is their mahi. You know, they turn up every day and do this mahi, and for you, inside your inside your world, it's just overwhelming, and they make your pathway forward bearable. You know,
you know, although it was a challenging time, you know, from challenges or things that that are most challenging often brings the most growth, and actually often brings a lot of learning. In terms of your own well-being, what's some of the things that you can take away from that time or this time? Because I know that we're still, you know, what's the greatest learning that you've taken from that in terms of your personal well-being for you?
Yeah, I think radical change for me, really. I mean, I was a very busy person, like we all are, busy. But I filled every minute of my day with mahi, and I never said no to anything. I felt like I wasn't complete unless I was participating on multiple levels, on multiple projects. I a lot of that, although a lot of that, you know, was about giving back as well. So, you know, there was a beautiful self-fulfillment from that as well. But what I do now is my life is very small. I mean, I'm still in recovery, so I don't have a lot of energy. And I've learnt that I just can't operate like that anymore. I have to reorient and reorganize and reprioritize my time and my commitments so that I can get through the day without falling over, because it's a door you don't want to open again. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I can't let that back into my life. I mean, for the next 5 years, I get checkups every 3 months, and the message is loud and clear. You must look after yourself. Your well-being is paramount. You've got to eat right. You've got to exercise. You've got to treat yourself with as much care as the special projects that you put your energy into for other people. And that does not come easy for me. I don't like to say no to anything or anybody, but you know, I recognize the merit in that. I want to be around for my mokopuna. I want to be here for that. I want to be able to be a nanny who has energy to burn for those babies. You know what I mean? I just, you know, I've got to get through this next 5 years and you know, build up my weight and my energy. So on the 1st of January this year, I resigned from a business association that I've been on for 12 years, which was massive for me. And the timing wasn't accidental. I have been a person my whole life who made New Year's resolutions, and then didn't, you know, got busy should be my bloody middle name. And on the 1st of January this year, I was up at the park and just having some time to myself, and I came to that realization that right now that energy that I was putting into that just wasn't serving me or my whānau. So, and because I'm a Taurian and we make split decisions and never look back, so it's been, you know, I've managed to turn that energy into other things. I'm trying to read more. I'm going to yoga once a week, you know, just really just tuning that energy.
It must be a trait of the Tāne Tinarais to not really be able to say no sometimes. I think, you know, knowing your sister so well is also yeah. But Maud, I want to thank you so much, because I am well aware that you know, your energy has been affected by, you know, around the challenges that you've had. So I really appreciate your time here this evening, and we'll get you to join us later. But thank you for sharing your truly inspirational kōrero. And again, I think, you know, during Mental Health Awareness Week, for yourself and for Linda, who have both had challenges within the space of, and within that word that, you know, we all have this thing about cancer. I think it just shows an incredible, and I'm not a lover of the word resilience, but actually just your fortitude and the way that, you know, you carry on. Just, you're both so inspirational in terms of, okay, we've got to live our life. We've got to take care of ourselves, and, you know, life is for living, but we've got to make some decisions about what's good for us. So I commend you, and I wish I could give you a cuddle, and I look forward to seeing you next month so I can give you a cuddle. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to thank you, Maud. It's been lovely having you. Please stay online. Mwah. And now I'm super duper excited to welcome this. We were talking tonight, actually, my partner and I, about how incredibly spunky and gorgeous she is. And it's the wonderful, lovely Hana Tapiata. No mahara mai e hoa. You're on mute. Unmute, yes.
Hey, kia ora, what a start.
So tell us, Hana, I know a lot of people know a lot about you, but tell us where you're from and tell us about your mahi. We'd love to hear more. Kia ora.
hei whakarāpopoto I tērā au iaku hononga whakapapa, ko te aroa, ko mātātua, ko horauta, ko tainui, ko Ironside, ngā herenga waka, no te rotorua nui a kahumata mō moi, tōku whānau, kei reira rātou tēnei wā, kātahi anō ai ka hunuku mai ki te rohe manunu māku, ki Waitaha, ki o Tautahi. So kia ora everyone, my name's Hannah, and whakapapa tūrotorua into other rohe around the place, but currently in Christchurch. Taking a contract down here, and I've been here a month so far at a Māori design company, creating or developing, making an interpretation of the taiao and creating a narrative, or I guess a modern day pūrākau, about our relationship with digital technology and the internet and that kind of space.
Wow. Now, you've been doing some work online as well, because I know a number of wahine that are partaking. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please, Hannah?
About 3.5 years ago, I started writing a blog, and initially it was to try and get people to hire me as a photographer, because Google and YouTube and all the different webinars and workshops I went to suggested that if you want to be a freelance photographer, you should have a blog, so that you can generate just more avenues for people to find you. And I didn't want to write about nothing. And so I thought, well, I know tupuna mātauranga, I know our kōrero, and I really enjoy it. And I saw it as an opportunity to share that, and also to get paid as well with the photography money. And I was living in Perth at the time, and the problem with that, with my plan, was that I didn't really know too many people, and no one knew me over there. And so I just ended up taking photos of myself, probably 95% of the time. And people usually want photos with their whānau or with other people, which isn't what I was sharing. I didn't get too many photography gigs, but I started to get more people inquiring about our pūrākau or different kōrero that I'd share, and that blog or the social media platform really grew from there. Which into doing videos, and into a book or two, into radio, and into all these other things. And at the start of this year, into a program where it's using whakapapa, using our own mātauranga, and to help us in that self-discovery or self-awareness, self-empowerment kind of space. And so running the second round of that now.
So can I ask, where did your tupuna mātauranga, where did you learn that? How did you, did you learn that through kura, wharikura? Did you learn that from your kuia kaumātua? Can you tell us where that came from?
I'm very into it. So I was raised in Kōrero in Kura Kaupapa Māori, and immersed in that culture, or in our pūrākau. So grew up thinking Maui was the biggest, baddest superhero out, or just like Hercules in the Greek mythology. And but when I was growing up, they were only ever stories. Maui fishing out tika Maui was only ever this legend that didn't really happen, or it was just kind of like that. And it wasn't until I started working for my iwi in Te Aroa in 2014, where we took those pūrākau and the knowledge in them and used them as a framework to help our people improve their hauora. And for example, we'd create programs over 8 or 10 weeks based on moteatea, visit the places in those moteatea, which are usually maunga or across moana, and you have to hike to get there. And so you get a physical hit, you get this spiritual connection to your tupuna, emotional connection of strengthening all of those ties, and at the end of it, our people were so, they're just whole new versions of themselves because they felt that connection to who they are. Very whakapapa. And so it just blew my mind really into how we could use whakapapa in that kind of active, interactive kind of way. Yeah.
So is that kind of where your passion for this came from? Was from all those experiences?
Yeah, that definitely accelerated it, or maybe like fuel on the fire. But I remember, so I grew up in, like, I'm a kura kid, and the environment around me, even non-Māori, were supportive of Māori. And so I always believed that it was a positive thing to be Māori, and I assumed other Māori knew that too, or non-Māori were supportive of that. And then in my last year of school, I went to Hamilton Girls High, and my whole world, like, I was in isolation for 18 years. Been practicing for COVID lockdown for 18 years. It felt like. And yeah, I met Māori who didn't know how to speak Māori, which was, I just had never met Māori like that before. People who didn't know their whakapapa or who weren't proud to be Māori, and it was the biggest culture shock of my life. And I didn't know what I could do to help them, or that they wanted help, or if they felt they needed it, or if I was in the right. And yeah, it was just a really confusing time for me. But I think that's when the seed was planted to try and share the taonga that I had been gifted with, and share that in a way that people, or Māori, could come and take from it when and if they're ready for it. But as a 17-year-old, I was like, I have no idea.
and you know, I'm really excited because I've loved seeing, and I said to Nikora, you know, my darling, tonight, I said, man, she's a tease. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, her and that Nana, I really want to watch Nana, right? And all I'm getting is like a minute here and a little bit there, but I really want to watch Nana. That looks like that would have been an incredibly wonderful series to have worked on with your nan.
Yeah. So really lucky that she's still around. She's my only grandparent, or kaumātua. My kōrero passed away before I was born, so I never got to meet him. And then my mum's parents passed away in the last 7 years. And so I still have my nan. She's currently waiting for an operation in Waikato. Just to get a pacemaker put in, but they're taking care of her there. But before moving down to Christchurch, really fortunate to go pick her up and kidnap her for a day or two, or take her out and just hang out with her and ask her questions about her life or what she thinks about us. Podcast.
How does Nan feel about the mahi that you do and all the contributions that you make to so many others?
I don't think she is aware. I try to not think about that kind of stuff. She knows that I share kōrero online, and she said one day, a couple of years ago, are you going to make me famous, Moko? I thought that would happen with your koro, and I'm pretty sure she was taking the mickey out of it at the time. I got with your koro, and I thought, he got these roles and I'd be famous too, but I had to look after the kids. And I said I'd try, but then my brother did a wakahui episode on about her, and so she got that opportunity, and I share her as much as I can, and I think she loves it, low-key.
Awesome. Now, the one thing about working in, your tūpuna mātauranga space, and I do refer to it as that ora space, that well-being space as well. Sometimes it's challenging because there's an expectation that you're always going to be in a place of, kia tau te rangamārie, in a place of Māori order. There's kind of, and there's just some days where you just want to go, actually, I'm really having a bit of a tickle day today. How you must have had some challenges along the way, and I'm just wondering, when have you had some challenges, and how have you worked through those, and have you used your own knowledge to actually navigate your way through that?
Yeah, so many people would be able to think always be on point or be in a certain level, and that definitely used to be me, and still catch myself thinking like that sometimes, and because I'm a people pleaser from way back. And I was like a good student at school, and I always like teacher's pet up until I met my boyfriend, my high school sweetheart, and then started to get a bit rebellious. But it wasn't until like I always have a thing or whakaaro that I try to stay true to, which is mean what you say and say what you mean. And so if you're unhappy or if you're not having a good day, I would rather hear that than try to cover it up, even though I often do that sometimes, just because I don't want to get into it, or it's depending on the person as well. But in 2015, I injured my shoulder, and I was on this pathway to try and play for New Zealand in 7s and 15s rugby. And then I got injured, and then like this other thing happened, and there was just this series of unfortunate events, and I felt stink just all the time. And people would ask, "Oh, hey, like how are you going?" And I would tell them, it's like, "Oh, I feel like shit." And to see people's reactions, like a lot of them are just like, just didn't know what to do with it, because it's like, no, you're supposed to say, "Oh, I'm all good." That default business as usual, like, oh, okay, cool. Oh yeah, that surface level stuff. And I was over it, and I couldn't even do that at the time. And so really interesting to see people's reactions and them try to fix as well, which was usually the second thing. It's like, oh, well, what can I do to fix you, because this is making me uncomfortable. And so just watching all of those different things unfold. And then also people really close to me just let me feel the way that I was feeling, and ask if they could help, or if they could take me for a walk or do some of that normal kind of stuff, which was really nice. So it exposed a lot of things and the depth of different relationships, but probably more than anything, my relationship with myself.
Yeah.
And so that's where the writing came in with the blog post as well, was trying to understand, well, why do I feel so crap? And then getting those layers away, and probably don't have enough time to go into it really deep, but I had become attached to those external labels of being an athlete or being a good worker, and those got taken away. And all I was left with was myself, and I didn't know what that meant.
and to go from being at such an elite level too, and then suddenly, okay, that must have
been celebrated for that. Like, oh, I've made the team, and so we'd have a big whānau kai to celebrate that. But anytime I try to go deep and ask a question like, oh, what are your thoughts on this? Or have you thought about, I don't know, does this happen to you? And people are like, oh, that's weird. Why are you asking me about that? And so, as a kid growing up, you start to learn how to behave based on what you're encouraged for, what people like, what you get rewarded for, and then you stop doing things if you get punished for it. And so I found in peeling away those layers and just sitting with myself, because that's all I had, with whānau and support as well, I started to notice those different patterns and how I started to suppress these attributes that I have that I think are quite cool. But I had no way to express those, or I didn't feel confident to. And so, started to attach to external things instead. But then with the injury and with those different breakdowns in my life came the opportunity to peel those away and I guess break through from that shell and start learning how to fly, maybe.
Yeah. And tapping into your tūpuna mātauranga, I would assume.
Yeah, and that's where I really started to lean into it, because with those labels and roles gone, whakapapa was the only thing there, either in a physical with my whānau around me or in that mātauranga as well. And so I knew I was the culmination of my tupuna and everyone who'd come before me. So what are some things that they've done that I can really hold on to try and pull myself out of this? You know, I'm built for purpose. I'm descended from teachers, from this line, of this line. I'm built the way I am physically. My hair does what it wants. I think for a reason. I feel deeply. I internalize too much for a reason. There must be something I can do with these taonga. And so, yeah, the last couple of years have really been about trying to figure that out. So what purpose can these serve?
So while you're, having come through that, and obviously by the sounds of it, and thank you for sharing, because you've shared some of your learnings. And I know you do podcasts and you got a website and you're here and you're there. What do you do for you, Hannah? What do you do for you in terms of your well-being? How does Hannah look after Hannah, or how does Hannah nurture Hannah?
Hannah loves me. That's the main thing. But it's really, I think it's funny because I don't really do that much. So often I travel, or I'm in certain hui, or the mahi I do can take me to different places, or I get to meet some awesome people. But if I'm not doing mahi, then I'm just in chill mode. And I'm either asleep, or I'm at the beach, or in the ngahiri. I've only been to the beach though, on a few treks down here in Christchurch. So if anyone's here, I might have to tee up with Wards to go out into the Taiong. But it's really been about learning what I need to do and what works for me. And I like the quiet time, because when I'm on the podcast or the radio or doing the videos, it's a lot of output and a lot of energy, which I enjoy. But in order to look after myself or fill up the tank again, it's a lot of quiet time. Which is
awesome. That is nice, because that wasn't the answer I was expecting. So, it's good to hear something that, that's great. So thank you, Hannah, for sharing. I'm going to ask Maud and Linda to come back online, please. And then we'll just have a little bit of kōrero. We've gone a little bit over time, but, when the kōrero is so wonderful and so inspirational, time is not of the essence, right? In this particular circumstances. So thank you so much for all sharing. And if anyone that is watching online has a question or two, then please feel free to ask a question. Thank you all for sharing. Thank you all. It's nice to know that Maud and Hannah are now in the same city. So, there's a connection there. And I think there's been a really lovely flow to the kōrero this evening. And it's really great to hear about what you do for each of for your own well-being, because everyone is different and everyone has different things that they do for their well-being. I just, knowing that it's Mental Health Awareness Week this week, I've called it Te Wiki o Te Heni Ngaro, is I think what I reframed it as. And today we launched a kaimahi ora with Waikato Tainui, and their number one priority was around Heni Ngaro and Karea Roto, which is emotional wellbeing. And then, doing some work with Vodafone today around mental health and wellbeing. It's been a huge week where it's really been in the limelight. Do any of you something that you've learned or that you do for your own mental health and wellbeing, for your Heni Ngaro? Any of you like to share? Mauds? I'm like, if you're not going to speak up, I'm going to pick on you.
I was like, she's looking at me. She's looking at me.
Start with you.
All right. All right. I have formerly been a person who never gave too much thought to mental health, because I am I'm a real even keel kind of person. You know, I've like my whole life I've just been, and I don't know whether that's part of being the eldest child. I've always kind of had that whole, I got to keep it here. You know, I got to hold it down for my sister and my brother and my whānau, and that's my role. And I can't drop that ball ever. And when I got my diagnosis last year, the first thing I thought was, oh, fuck, I dropped the ball big time. Like, what a bloody big ball I just dropped there. Did you see what I dropped there? I dropped that.
Drop the mic.
I was like, oh, shit. And I was like, oh, me being sick is really going to cause some freaking ruckus, and I better not, you know, I better not die either, because, like, God, like living with, you know, I was like, got to put every ounce of energy into my well-being. I must beat this. I must come through this. I've got too much living to do and too much loving to do. And that sustained me right the way until the kind of final part of my treatment. I was getting chemo and radio, and I hit that wall where your good intentions hits the wall of your body just not coping anymore. You know, that breakdown of the treatment itself and what it does to you on a cellular level, combined with the crazy drugs they're giving you, you know. And I had a major meltdown, and, you know, did a whole lot of soul pouring out into my private, thank goodness it was private, my private Facebook group of, you know, it's like, I can't even open my eyes, let alone even countenance the idea of getting out of bed. And I'm so shocked, because I've never experienced this before. I've got dear people in my life that live with that feeling, but I've never felt this before. And the shit ton of empathy that fell on my sorry ass right then and there, I was like, oh my God, this feeling, people live with this feeling. You know, for me, I'm lucky because I know that I'm feeling this way because of the chemical soup in my body and the morphine that I'm taking to manage the side effects of the pain, you know. So coming out the other side, it gave me, well, I hope I can humbly say that it gave me empathy and insight into how it feels to live with that. So now I try and just be that really annoying guy who's like, you know, I tell everyone how I'm feeling all the time in the hope that reciprocates that in someone else. Like, I caught up with my girlfriend yesterday, and she's like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm not feeling good. I'm struggling to do anything outside of mucky right now. I feel I've got a real lack of confidence, because I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear it when I speak, that I can't say the words like I used to be able to say them, and it kind of knocks me off my confidence. And my body's, you know, I lost 25 kg in the process. I don't know who I am anymore. How are you? And she's like, actually, I'm not having a great day. And I was like, oh, let's talk about that, you know. So what was the question, e hoa? I forgot.
It doesn't matter what the question was, because that was just some really beautiful kōrero that you shared with us. So, you know, sometimes it just doesn't matter what the question was, Maud. It's that you shared some really, you know, and you know, having worked with a number of organisations around mental health and wellbeing, the one word that is really prevalent and that came through your kōrero just then is empathy. So, yeah, we mahi to you. Thank you, Maud, for your kōrero, you know. Hannah, you know what the question was. The question is really like, what's one learning that you would like to share with people that are watching or listening? And the wonderful thing about this medium is that people watch it long after it's finished. So if you had, you know, during Mental Health Awareness Week, there's been a lot of kōrero, a lot of themes, people are putting up lots of things. What's one thing that you think is really, that you'd like to share with people during this time? Yeah.
Kia ora. And kia ora no more. It's really cool to hear that. And it made me think of conversations with some of my friends where someone said when they're not having a good day, and then someone else can feel like they can be honest and open with that too. So very relatable. But one of the biggest things I've learned being someone who thinks a lot is that each thought thinks it's important, or it makes out like it's important and that it's true and that you need to pay attention to it. And it's taken me a long time to realize that just because I have a certain thought doesn't make it true. But if I just sit with it for a little bit, it can be like, okay, well, why are you here? Especially the ones like about 2 months ago, I started having thoughts like I was undeserving and unworthy of all the good in my life. You know, I have people who love me, good opportunities, and just abundance. And I felt like I didn't deserve any of it. And I was like, okay, well, I don't think this is true, but there's a reason why. Well, there must be, because they just kept coming. And so, and just sitting with them and not just blocking them out, because I think there are moments where we can do that, just block things out to get something done. But I had time. And so I sat with those, and I realized that I felt that way because I had been putting myself in what I wanted to work on to the side, and I was compromising that to do other kaupapa for other people. And so I was, just putting myself and my needs or my dreams on hold while I did everything else. So I felt fake, or that I wasn't, and that's where the undeserving came from, because I wasn't being true to myself. And so in sitting with those thoughts, even though they weren't true, they had an element of truth to teach me, I feel.
Yeah.
And by sitting with them but not buying into them, I have learned about myself at a deeper level, and then removed myself from one of those kaupapa and put another one, or wrapped up what I needed to with it. And a few weeks later, moved down to Christchurch to pursue this opportunity that is right down my alley, and it's been amazing.
Ka pai.
Yeah.
Sorry, Hannah, you hadn't finished.
Oh, no, I was just going to add to that. And so now, like, I feel that I am living, living the kind of path that I want to live. And I feel like all the good in my life that has always been there, I feel like I'm meeting it, and I'm reciprocating, or I'm giving in what's coming back to me.
That's awesome. And Linda, for you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, cool. So one of the things that actually resonates of what you've both said is when people ask you, are you okay? And when you tell the truth, they actually want a disingenuous answer. So they don't want to say, actually, I don't feel so good. Or, and so I'm just going to do this. This is just something that had happened. And I'm going to mihi out to my mother. So my journey's been about 10 years, I think. It's probably about 10 years. I was a very happily married woman for 20 years until one day I was no longer married. I didn't really have much, choice in that thing. So I had absolutely zero resilience when it came to the end of a relationship, because I'd never, ever had an end of a relationship. From the moment I was 12 years old and I woke up one day and boys, they always liked me back. So I always had something, I always had a little handbag that I was carrying around with me. So to then not have a husband, to then and have 2 small children, to then not have a house, to then not have any money, to then not have a job. So all of these things. So there was this resilience that I just never had. And when we talk about Mental Health Awareness Week, at one point I remember standing inside my house, and I had this beautiful home in Wellington, and I overlooked the sea, and it was absolutely gorgeous. But I just couldn't afford the mortgage. It was crippling me. And I just really, I wasn't in a state where I could work with the work that I used to do. So I was a high performing type A type personality, and so and for people you know, for people like us, and that's all of us, then we feel shame because we're not performing at that high level of what everybody expects. Now, I remember standing in my living room and I was out looking out at the sea, and I was holding this handful of pills. And I thought to myself, if I have these, then all the noise will go away. I just wanted the noise to go away because I couldn't think. I just needed the noise to go away. And I just couldn't understand why this noise couldn't go away. And it was a real, and for me, I'm a very positive person. This is the first time I'd ever actually come up against what it's like to actually feel depressed. You know, I mean, everybody has their ups and downs days, but these were like the down days were the down days, and we got more down days, and then it was a down week, and then it was a down month. It ended up being about a down 3 years. Wow. And then so going to the doctor, and then, you know, I had an auntie who actually looked after me. She came and she lived with me, and she looked after me, and she said to me, she goes, I don't want to get a phone call one day that something's happened to you. And that, however, we went through this whole pathway. So this is where my whole philosophy around life and whole order, this is where I started to just peel back things that weren't important. Money wasn't important. My relationship with my children was important. Good food was important. Not going out to fancy restaurants, that wasn't important. You know, spending time with my mother who was sick, that was important. But one day, you saw the light, and when you walk into the darkness and then you come out of the light, the sun is warmer and the light is lighter, and the journey is the journey. You know, the pain that you felt actually makes the journey of getting out of the darkness just so much better. And one thing that you also said, which I think is about resilience, because it doesn't matter what you do, you can get yourself out of whatever shit you got yourself into, because what's the worst thing that's going to happen? The worst thing is that you may not be here, but that's not going to happen today, and it's not going to happen tomorrow, and it won't happen next week. So that was the lesson, but what it gave me was a really deep empathy, and I didn't have that before. I had compassion, but I didn't have empathy because I had never felt what it felt like to be in a point where it was actually easier to make the noise go away than it was to actually get up the next morning and to go through. So my auntie who looked after me, I saw her on Sunday. And I told her on Sunday, I said, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here, and I love you. You know, I told her that, and she goes, oh, don't say that. And I said, yes. I said, because you are one of the reasons why I'm here, because you just kept my waka steady, as it was. And when I mihi to my mother, the last day that I spent with my mum, and she said to me, she goes, you know what, darling? She said, it is already written in the stars what your future will be, and it was written in the stars before you were born and before I was born. And I always think that she hung around long enough to make sure that the glow came back. Because she said to me, she goes, well, dear, she goes, you know, I know you loved your husband very much, she said, but there was a little glow that happened inside of you when that all finished. And she goes, and can you do me a favour? And I said, what's that, Mum? She goes, you don't need to get married again.
I just want to thank you all so much. As I was sitting here, you know, we began Root Table Kōrero 2 years ago this month. And it has grown and grown, and we've featured people from all walks of life, from all across the motu, especially since our first rahui in April. And the whole purpose of Root Table Kōrero was to showcase those in the community that are superstars. And to each of you, you are each a superstar within so many communities across Aotearoa. And yes, I do probably have a little bit of a bias towards featuring our wahine, who are just remarkable creatures. And I think there's a beautiful word, maraikura, that I think could be applicable to you all and the many women and tāne that have spoken at Wu Table Kōrero. So from my heart to your heart, thank you so much for sharing this evening, for being so vulnerable, for sharing your kōrero, which is truly inspirational to so many people, and long may it continue. And yeah, just want to mihi to you all, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. We've gone way over time, but sometimes the kōrero is so good that time should not like determine the kōrero. I can see Nukora looking at me like, hey, but you know, at the same time I'm like, hey. So what I am going to do is I'm going to ask Hannah if she could please close us this evening. That would mean the world to me, Hannah. When I met you, it was like I had stars in my eyes when I saw you, and I look forward to seeing you when I come down to Otautahi. I'm like super duper excited now. So thank you so much to you all, and please, Hannah, would you close us with karakia this evening? Thank you.
Ka pai. Thank you, and thank you to Hannah for the invitation and providing this space, not just for us tonight, but for 2 years worth of Wu Table Kōrero and the 20 years ahead as well. Nō reira te maraikura, nei anō te whakahoki o tērā mihi ki a koe. Kia koe hoki Nikora in the background. And the karakia that I'll wrap us up with is about harvesting new ways of thinking, new ways of behaving, which I hope sparks something in the viewers, or even I know that that'll be happening for me as well from some of the kōrero that's been shared. Nō reira, kia hihiri tātou. Ka kāriki pōwhai tere ko tia te pū waihui konei, ko tia te kauru waihui konei, e ai hoki au ki te umua te tuhi ki hai tai ki ngā pū, ki ngā take, ki ngā wānanga, ki ngā tauira. Patua kuru, patua whao, patua te toki a tai haruru, piki ake hoki au nei ki runga ki te whare hukauka nui a Tangaroa. I whate ai e nuku tai maroro pērā hoki rā ko hau ko hine tuahoanga e kimi ana e hahau ana i te whānau arata. Ko ratai mate mai te awa I piko piko I whiti, mate maranga mai nuku e tātou arangi. Haumi e hui e tai.
Thank you for all those that joined us this evening, and thank you to you all. Kia ora. Mwah, mwah, mwah.